April 8, 1944, 1:17 hours. 10 feet above the hedgerows outside Saint Marcel, Brittany. The C-47's wheels are almost close enough to clip the black tops of the apple trees. In the cockpit, the altimeter needle shakes like it's trying to warn them in plain English. Too low. Insane low. The kind of low that gets you killed by the ground before the enemy even has a chance. Flight Lieutenant John Jock McAllister, RAF, keeps his gloved hand locked on the yoke, jaw set so hard the muscles jump. The windscreen is a sheet of ink. No moon. No horizon. Only the thin, ugly smear of lighter darkness where the fields begin then vanish and appear again as the aircraft bucks through wet air. You can almost feel it. That damp Brittany cold sneaking through seams, through collars, through courage. It smells like oil, canvas, and fear you don't say out loud. Behind them, in the fuselage, the dispatchers crouch beside the open door. The slipstream howls through the gap like an animal. Red light. No talking. Just hands on straps and eyes on a glowing watch face. Somewhere in the dark below somewhere, the French are waiting. 200 guerrillas. 200 men with old rifles, stolen German ammo, and no hope of holding the roads without supplies. 200 shadows who have been promised an airdrop tonight. McAllister's navigator, Flying Officer Peter Hargreaves, leans into the dim glow of the instruments, trying to make sense of a dead world. Map on his knees, pencil clenched. His voice is calm, but it's the calm of someone forcing the universe to behave. Another 30 seconds. Hold her steady. McAllister doesn't answer. He can't spare the air. They're flying without the luxury of altitude. Because altitude is safety, and safety is also the surest way to miss the drop zone in this weather. The cloud base is sitting on the countryside like a lid. They can read the land by touch, by instinct, by terror, and by disobedience. Because RAF doctrine for night drops into occupied territory is blunt for a reason. You do not run low. Low means a stray tree, a power line, a church spire, a ridge you didn't know existed. Your war ends in a field no one will talk about. Low means the Germans don't need flak to kill you. But the order came anyway, thin and official on paper, thick and reckless in reality. Deliver the containers. Despite conditions. That sentence will haunt their sleep if they get sleep. A rivulet of rain snakes along the inside of the cockpit glass. McAllister's eyes track it without meaning to. He forces himself back to the panel. Airspeed, RPM, manifold pressure. Each dial a tiny prayer. The aircraft shudders, not quite a stall, not quite steady. He feels the engines through his boots. That familiar vibration now sharpened by the knowledge that if one of them coughs, there's no room to recover. The intercom crackles. Stand by. Stand by. It's the rear dispatcher, Sergeant Arthur Taffy Evans, RAF. He's shouting into the mic with his mouth practically on it, because the door is open and the wind is trying to tear the words away. In the cargo bay, men sit on the floor with their backs to the ribs of the aircraft. Special Air Service and Free French liaison, types faces blackened, eyes bright. One of them, Captain Pierre Marienne of the Free French, checks the buckle of his parachute harness for the 3rd time. The metal is cold enough to burn. They aren't chatting about glory. They aren't reciting speeches. Every man knows what waits if the drop goes wrong. German patrols, dogs, a flashlight beam, catching a parachute in a tree. Boots crunching close, the click of a rifle safety. Then the kind of silence that follows screams. Marion's fingers go to the small object tucked inside his jacket, a folded scrap of paper with names and meeting points that he must not let the Germans take. He thinks of Saint Marcel, of the little roads that braid between farms, and of the Maquis fighters who can't move openly, who can't stockpile openly, who survive on thin margins and thicker courage. He thinks, too, of the promise London makes in whispers. Hold on. Help is coming. If the aircraft doesn't kill them first, the C-47 skims over a copse of trees. Branches thrash in the prop wash. McAllister, his stomach tightens in a way he hasn't felt since training accidents. The ones they don't laugh about in the mess. Hargreaves bends low over the map, and up again, then presses his face closer to the glass, as if he can will the night to offer a landmark. There, he starts, but it isn't confidence. It's hope wearing the uniform of certainty. That should be the river. McAllister catches a brief glint water like a black blade cutting through the fields. It appears, disappears, returns. His hands sweat inside his gloves. Another voice comes over the intercom, this one clipped, controlled, an officer's voice trying not to sound like a man who knows he might be writing his own obituary. McAllister, this is Squadron Leader Robert Bobby Keene. What's your height? Keene's aircraft is somewhere behind them, another C-47 in the formation, following blind, trusting the lead ship not to fly them into the earth. The responsibility feels like weight on McAllister's spine. 10 feet over the hedges, McAllister says. A pause. Even through static, you can hear the disbelief. We're going to be court-martialed, Keene says softly. McAllister exhales through his teeth, eyes on the darkness ahead. Only if we live. That's the bargain tonight. Live and face the paperwork. Or die and be commended posthumously. A flicker down below, tiny, deliberate, like a firefly that learned to speak in Morse. Then another. Then a third. Not random. Not lightning. Not a farmer's lantern drifting. Signal lamps. The drop zone is there. It's real. Not a rumor on a map. For a moment, relief comes so hard it almost makes McAllister's hands go loose. Then it's replaced by something worse. Now they have to do it. Hargreaves calls it out. 3 lights in a line recognition pattern. The dispatcher's voice rises again. 2 minutes. In the cargo bay, Evans grips the static line cable with one hand and the first supply containers release with the other. Metal ring against metal hook. Check, check, check. He's done this before, over friendly territory. Over training fields with ambulances on standby and instructors watching. This is different. Here, a mistake doesn't mean a reprimand. It means a Frenchman dies with an empty rifle. It means a German unit survives to execute hostages the next morning. Packed tight. And stamped with bureaucratic neatness by a war that rarely feels neat up close. Evans shouts into the intercom again. 30 seconds. McAllister feels the aircraft rise slightly on a gust. He corrects. Too much correction could smash them into the ground. Too little correction could lift them away from the signal lights and drop supplies into a swamp, or worse, into a German camp. The signal lights below suddenly blink out, not slowly, not one by one, all at once. A trap? A warning? A German patrol moving in? A Maquis fighter dragging a lamp under his coat because he's seen something? Hargreaves swallows. Where'd they go? McAllister's eyes strain into the dark, searching for the field's outline, the gap in the hedgerows, a patch of open ground they need. His heartbeat is loud enough to feel in his throat. Then farther ahead, a different light snaps on. A single point. Then 2. Then 3 again, but shifted, moved, like a hand just redrew the world. Evans's voice comes through. Urgent now. We're on top of it drop now, or we miss. McAllister stares at the new pattern, and a cold realization crawls up his back. Someone on the ground is moving the signal. That means someone down there is alive, thinking, reacting in real time. Or someone is luring them. The hedgerows rush beneath the belly of the aircraft. The door yawns open to the night. In the back, Evans reaches for the release. And McAllister has to decide right now whether to trust the lights and break every rule that ever kept the pilot alive. McAllister doesn't blink. He can't afford the fraction of a second. The new trio of lights sits farther left than the map says it should, just enough to sour your confidence. Hargreaves' pencil hovers over the chart as if it might stab the truth out of paper. Could be a correction, Hargreaves murmurs. They may have seen us drifting. Or it could be Germans who found the lamps and learned the pattern. In the cargo bay, Sergeant Evans doesn't wait for certainty. At this height, there's no graceful loiter, no second pass. One pass means one chance. Green in 5. He yells and slaps the signal panel. The red light dies. Green light floods the men's faces, turning them the color of old bruises. Captain Pierre Marienne rises with the others, clipped onto the static line. The open door is a rectangle of pure darkness and screaming wind. It smells like wet soil and exhaust and the sharp tang of adrenaline. You can almost feel the plane's skin trembling under strain. Marienne nods once. No wasted motion. He has trained for this, imagined it, dreaded it. Still, the moment your boots reach the door, instinct begs you to cling to metal and stay inside the thing that's flying. Outside is occupied France. Outside is a gamble with teeth. McAllister steadies the C-47, so low the hedges look like they might scrape paint. The aircraft vibrates in a way that feels wrong, like it's arguing with the physics of staying airborne. Evans yanks the first container release. The bundle punches out into the night. A pale ghost for an instant before it vanishes into black. Another container follows. The wind whips and tugs at the cargo as it leaves. The C-47 lurches slightly, lighter, and McAllister corrects without thinking. A second later, the first jumper goes. Marienne watches the man step out and disappear, swallowed. Then it's his turn. He shuffles forward, the static line taut, and throws himself into the void. The violence of it hits like a fist. Noise vanishes. The howl becomes a distant roar. The world becomes wind and falling, and the ugly thought that the parachute might not open. Then the jerk hard enough to bite into shoulders rips him upward as the canopy blooms above. He swings, legs bicycling for balance. The lights are gone again, covered, doused, moved. He can't see who signaled them. Marienne yanks a riser, trying to drift toward the nearest tree line. He wants cover the moment his boots hit earth. A lone parachutist in an open field is a target with no excuse. Then he sees it brief, faint, like a cigarette ember. A shuttered flashlight, 2 pulses, pause, 1 pulse. Not German. Not random. A code. He feels relief so sharp it almost becomes pain. Someone is there. Someone is alive and speaking in light. He hits the ground hard, rolls as trained, and is up instantly, hands on the harness, quick releases. The parachute can kill you after it saves you, drag you across a field, snag you on a hedge, hang you like laundry for a patrol to find. He tears the webbing free and drags the silk into a ditch, shoving it down into mud and nettles. Footsteps fast. A shape bursts from behind a hedge. A man in a civilian jacket with a Sten gun held low. Pierre? The man hisses. Marianne's breath catches. Jean? Zhang Legiwilu local Maquis organizer, a farmer's son with hands made for plows and now stained by war. His eyes are fever bright, scanning the sky. Not here, Legiwilu says. Move. They're close. Close. Above them the C-47 thunders past. So low the sound isn't distant thunder. It's an invading presence, heavy and undeniable. Legiwilu winces as if the noise physically hurts. Not the controlled blink of signal lamps. These are muzzle flashes. Quick, staccato. Small arms. Hargreaves yells. A line of tracer arcs, upward thin, red stitches trying to sew the aircraft to the earth. The first bullets go wide. But at this height, wide is still close enough to hear the slap of metal being struck. A sharp clang rings through the cockpit. He keeps the nose level, keeps the aircraft alive through sheer refusal to let it die. Keene's voice crackles over the radio, suddenly urgent. Lead, I'm taking fire repeat. Taking fire. McAllister's mouth goes dry. If he stays low, the Germans can keep pouring bullets into him until something vital breaks. Stay on my wing. McAllister barks. Drop and go. In the cargo bay, Evans is still pushing containers out into the night, still shoving men toward the door, still counting seconds like a miser counts coins. A bullet punches through the fuselage with a sound like ripping cloth. The wind changes tone as air finds a new hole to scream through. Someone flinches. Evans grabs the next container's hook and feels his fingers slick oil, sweat. Looking wastes time. Another jumper steps to the door and freezes. A mind staring into darkness and realizing there is nothing under your feet. Evans slams a palm against the man's shoulder. Out! Below, Marian and Legiwilu crawl through wet grass to a hedge gap. The night is alive, now with distant shouts, German voices, harsh and commanding. A dog barks, frantic, the sound carrying across fields like a siren. Legiwilu grips Marianne's sleeve so hard it hurts. They found the first containers, he breathes. At the edge. We moved the lights to pull you away, so it wasn't a lie. It was a desperate correction made under pressure, made while Germans searched. Marianne's mind races. If the Germans are already on the containers, they'll take weapons meant for the Maquis. They'll trace the drop. They'll follow footprints. They'll find the men who came to collect. And they'll do what occupiers do when they feel embarrassed. Where are our men? Hidden, waiting. A sudden burst of gunfire cracks closer sharp, controlled, not panic shots. Someone is firing with purpose. Legiwilu's face tightens. A machine gun changes everything. Above, McAllister's C-47 clears the field. He starts to climb just a few precious feet when the aircraft jolts like a kicked animal. The left engine coughs. Hargreaves shouts, eyes snapping to the gauges. The needle on oil pressure flutters. At this speed and altitude, an engine failure is not an inconvenience. It is a decision the universe makes for you. The C-47 shudders again, and for an instant, the nose dips. In the back, Evans braces as the floor tilts. He slams the final container out. Last one, last one. The green light stays on, by the creeping awareness that they might not get out of France at all. Keen's voice returns, strained. I'm losing altitude. The world turns to nothingness. No ground, no lights, no sense of direction. Only instruments and the hammering of a wounded engine. And then, through the intercom, Evans' voice smaller now, shocked. Skipper, we've got a man down. Out. Because the wounded man isn't dead. He's alive. And if McAllister turns for England, that man bleeds out in the dark, with no doctor, no morphine, and German patrols closing. McAllister stares at the trembling engine gauges, and hears himself ask the question no pilot is supposed to ask in a war of orders. McAllister doesn't answer out loud. He doesn't need to. In the cockpit's dim red glow, he shifts his weight, fingers tightening, and the C-47 banks slow, deliberate back into the darkness it just escaped. Hargreaves snaps his head around. Jock. I heard him. McAllister cuts in, voice flat. We're not leaving him. It isn't heroism. Not the neat kind people write about later. It has something Messier, a refusal to accept that a man becomes expendable because a form in London says so. The left engine coughs again, the propeller's rhythm stuttering like a heart skipping beats. Oil pressure's dropping, Hargreaves warns. McAllister keeps the turn shallow, careful. Too steep, and the wounded engine will quit under strain. Too gentle, and they'll drift into God knows what German searchlights. Hills or worse, the same machine gun field the jumpers just fell into. Behind them, in the cargo bay, Sergeant Evans is kneeling beside the injured man Corporal Dennis Denny Price. Sassafy lies on his back with his helmet still strapped, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent attempt to breathe through pain. The bullet went in high, near the shoulder, but it isn't clean. Nothing is clean in a flying tin can full of wind and fear. Blood has soaked his smock, black in the low light. Evans presses a field dressing hard against the wound, hands steady because they have to be. Price's lips move. Evans leans close. "Don't," Price whispers. "Don't turn back." Evans swallows. "Shut it. Save your breath." Price tries to laugh and fails. A wet sound. Court-martial. Anyway. Evans looks up at the open door, now closed, but still leaking cold. He imagines the Germans below, the Mackeys scrambling through hedges, the containers lying like gifts on the wrong doorstep. He keys the intercom. "Skipper." He's losing blood fast. "Needs a doctor." McAllister's reply is immediate. "We'll get him to one." Hargreaves stares at him as if he's watching a man step off a cliff. "To where?" "We're in cloud. The DZ is hot." "Keen's ship." "Can't hold altitude," McAllister finishes for him. "I know." Keen's aircraft is somewhere behind, a shadow in a shadow, his voice intermittent with strain. "Lead, I'm at 1,000 feet. Losing." Static, then the sound of heavy breathing. McAllister fights the urge to chase Keen's problems. Every pilot wants formation. Formation is comfort. Formation is survival. But tonight, survival is a solitary craft in a sky that has decided to kill you. Hargreaves flips the radio compass switch, trying to catch a bearing through the haze. The needle wobbles like a drunk. The cloud outside turns the world into a blank page. Then faint, maddening comes a flicker of light below, seen through a thin tear in the cloud. Not a signal lamp, a searchlight. It blooms upward like a pale spear, probing, sweeping, hunting for metal and wings. "Searchlight," Hargreaves barks. McAllister shoves the yoke, slipping the aircraft sideways, trying to stay in the cloud's thicker belly. The searchlight swings again, nearer. This is how it happens, not with a dramatic explosion, but with a beam of light finding you and refusing to let go. The beam clips the underside of the C-47 for half a second, turning the belly of the aircraft into a bright target, and then the flak starts. You don't hear the shell that kills you. You hear the ones that miss sharp, cracking bursts in the air that sound like the sky snapping its fingers. McAllister jerks the aircraft down and left, engines roaring, the wounded left engine protesting. The cockpit fills with the smell of hot oil. Another flak burst. Closer. The aircraft shudders as fragments ping off the fuselage like hail. Evans feels it in the back, to the vibration, the sudden sense that the air itself is full of knives. He hunches over Price, using his body like a shield without thinking. He's not brave. He's just there. Hargreaves' voice hardens. "We cannot repeat. Cannot go back over the field." McAllister's eyes flip down. Oil pressure on the left is almost gone. "Then we don't go over it," McAllister says. "We go around. Around means time. Time means more blood on the floor. It means more chances for flak to find them, for the engine to seize, for the cloud to thin at the worst possible moment. But it also means something else. A chance then, stubborn at reaching someone on the ground who can help. Hargreaves reaches for the radio, switching frequency to the clandestine set. His fingers tremble once, then steady. Hello, this is Aircraft Hawthorne. Calling Bramble. Do you receive?" He says, using the coded names they were given, the names that keep real men alive by not speaking real places into the air. Static answers. He tries again, voice tighter. "Bramble, this is Hawthorne. We have a wounded SAS man aboard. We are turning back. Request emergency landing instructions or medical contact." For a long moment, nothing. Then, faintly so faint you wonder if your mind invented it, a voice crackles through. "Hawthorne." Bramble receiving. Hargreaves' eyes widen. McAllister's knuckles whiten on the yoke. The voice is French-accented English, clipped by urgency. You are mad to return. Germans are in the fields. Need a doctor, Hargreaves snaps. Can you provide? A pause. Then, yes, but not there. Not Saint Marcel. Go west. There is a pasture near the chapel at Carryhool. Short, dangerous. We will mark with 2 lamps, not 3. McAllister's mouth goes dry. An improvised landing strip in occupied France. At night, in cloud breaks, with 1 engine dying. It's the kind of plan that sounds like suicide until you picture Corporal Price bleeding out on your cargo floor. Carryhool, McAllister repeats, tasting the unfamiliar syllables. 2 lamps, 2 lamps, the voice confirms. And do not circle. 1 pass only. We have maybe 10 minutes before patrols. Hargreaves looks at McAllister. If we land, we may not take off. McAllister stares into the cloud, seeing nothing, but imagining everything. A pasture too short, a fence in the wrong place. And then he thinks of the alternative flying away, letting Price die, and telling himself he had no choice. We land. In the back, Evans hears the change in engine note, feels the aircraft begin to descend. He leans close to Price's face. Listen, Evans says, voice low and fierce. We're putting down. You hear me? You stay alive until we get you to a doctor. Price's eyes flicker. He manages a tiny nod. The cloud thins, and the world reappears in pieces, hedges, fields, dark roads like scars. Every second is a coin spent from a purse that's almost empty. Then there. 2 lights, low to the ground, held apart like cautious hands. They don't blink in a pattern. They sit steady, brave, and terribly small against the night. Hargreaves exhales. That's it. McAllister lines up on the lights, dropping flaps carefully. The aircraft sinks. The pasture rushes toward them, uneven, slick with dew, bordered by hedgerows that might as well be stone walls at this speed. A gust hits the right wing. The C-47 wobbles. McAllister corrects too much, then less, fighting the urge to over-control. The left engine sputters, nearly quitting, as if offended by the demand. Hold, hold. Hargreaves mutters, not to McAllister, but to the universe. The wheels touch. The fuselage groans. Something in the back clatters loose. McAllister yanks the yoke, trying to keep the nose up, trying not to dig in. Brakes scream. The pasture is shorter than it looked. Of course it is. You can almost feel the hedge at the far end, rushing at them like a wall. Come on, McAllister hisses through clenched teeth. The C-47 lurches, skids, and finally mercifully stops with the nose only yards from the dark tangle of branches. For a heartbeat, there is silence so sudden it feels unreal. Then the right engine ticks down. The side door is thrown open, and cold night air floods in, carrying the smell of grass and damp earth and something else. Smoke. Not engine smoke, not oil. Wood smoke. Nearby, a shape runs toward them from the darkness. A man in a beret, another in a civilian coat. And behind them, a figure with a medical satchel clutched tight. Legilou's voice cuts through the night from somewhere near the lights. Hurry! Patrols! A distant engine sound answers him. Faint but rising German vehicles on a road not far away. The doctor reaches the aircraft, eyes locking on Price. Put him down, the doctor says in French-accented English, hands already working. Quickly. Inside the hedgerow, not here. Evans hesitates only long enough to look back toward the cockpit. McAllister and Hargreaves have climbed out, boots sinking into wet ground. The look of a man who has done something irreversible. Hargreaves points into the darkness. We need to be airborne in minutes. McAllister doesn't answer. His gaze is fixed on the distant road, where the engine sound grows louder. Because a landing is only half the crime. The other half is taking off again, before the Germans crest the rise and paint this pasture with headlights and gunfire. The doctor's hands are fast, practiced, and utterly unimpressed by romance. He slices Price's smock with a small knife, fingers probing the wound, pressing, packing. Price bites down on a strap to keep from screaming. Lung may be touched, the doctor mutters. He needs surgery, not here. Evans' throat tightens. He dies if we move him. He dies if you stay, the doctor snaps back, eyes flashing toward the road. Listen. A heavier growl. Gears. A second vehicle behind the first. WWII appears at the hedge gap, breathless. 5 minutes. McAllister stands in the pasture, staring down the length of it, measuring distance with the cold arithmetic of pilots. The roll, the lift, the hedge at the far end, waiting like a guillotine. The left engine is idling rough, coughing like a sick man forced to run. Hargreaves steps close, voice low. If we're taking off, we need weight off the ship. Evans hears it and feels his stomach drop. Weight means fuel. Gear, people, meaning Price. McAllister looks at the wounded man, then at the doctor. Can you keep him hidden? If Germans search, he doesn't finish. WWII fills in the silence. They will search. After the drop, after the gunfire, after they find containers, they will search everything. Evans swears under his breath. He looks at Price's face, pale in the lamplight, eyes locked on him like a drowning man looking for shore. Price forces words out. Don't leave me. Evans' jaw flexes. He can't bear the idea of carrying Price back into the aircraft and killing everyone with a failed takeoff. He can't bear the idea of leaving him under a hedge for the Germans to find. McAllister makes the choice with a pilot's cruelty quick, clean, final. We take him. Hargreaves starts to protest, then sees McAllister's eyes and stops. The argument will cost seconds they don't have. They lift Price Evans and a crewman under his shoulders and hips staggering through wet grass to the open door. Price whimpers, then clamps down, refusing to give the night the satisfaction of hearing him. Inside the C-47, they lay him near the bulkhead. Evans wedges rolled canvas under his head, presses a new dressing into the doctor's hands. The doctor follows them in without being asked. He climbs into the aircraft like a man boarding a hearse he intends to outrun. I go, he says simply. WWII grabs the side of the doorframe. No, you are needed here. The doctor's eyes flick. If I stay, he dies. If I go, maybe he lives. And if you are captured? WWII demands. The doctor's expression doesn't change. Then I will have done something before they break my hands. McAllister doesn't wait. Close up. Evans slams the door shut. The wind changes. The cockpit light feels dimmer, as if the aircraft itself understands the stakes. McAllister shoves throttles forward. The right engine answers with power. The left answers with reluctance, a stagger in its rhythm. The C-47 begins to roll, grass whipping beneath the fuselage. The pasture bumps them like a cart track, the airframe groaning as it gathers speed. Hargreaves calls out numbers like a priest reciting last rites. Airspeed, 60-70, the hedge at the far end grows larger. McAllister keeps the nose straight, jaw clenched, every muscle waiting for the left engine to give up. In the back, Evans braces himself over Price and watches the doctor's hands steady, pressing, listening with a stethoscope that seems absurd in this vibrating, shaking tin box. Outside, somewhere beyond the hedges, a pair of headlights suddenly balloons German vehicles cresting a rise, their beams sweeping the pasture's edge like fingers searching for a throat. They've found the lights. They've found the field. A horn blasts sharp, commanding, followed by a shout carried faintly through the grass and engine roar. McAllister doesn't look. He can't afford the distraction of being hunted. He keeps eyes forward, feeling the aircraft's reluctance to lift, begging it to become airborne. Come on, he whispers. Not prayer, not poetry, pure demand. The hedge rushes at them. Hargreaves' voice cracks. Airspeed 90. McAllister eases back on the yoke. The wheels skip, lightning. Then the C-47 lifts, barely, clearing the hedge by what feels like inches. Branches snap beneath the belly. Leaves explode upward in the prop wash. And then they're free of the pasture climbing into the night as rifle shots crack behind them. Muzzle flashes flickering near the headlights like angry insects. In the cargo bay, Evans finally breathes. But Price doesn't. His eyes roll, unfocused, and the doctor swears in French, fingers pressing harder, voice suddenly urgent. He's collapsing. He's collapsing now. McAllister hears it through the intercom and tastes the same metal fear as before. Because escaping the Germans was only the first race. Now they have to outrun a man's blood loss across occupied territory on a damaged engine in weather that hates them. Section 5. The Paper Trail of Disobedience. Cloud swallows the aircraft again, mercifully hiding them from the ground and cruelly blinding them to everything else. The cockpit becomes a small universe of instrument glow and engine vibration. Hargreaves navigates by needle and instinct, calling out headings toward the coast. The left engine keeps threatening to quit, but it doesn't. Not yet. In the back, the doctor works without theater, voice clipped. Evans obeys, his hands sticky, his sleeves dark. Price's breathing is shallow, like someone trying to sip air through a straw. You stay with me, Evans murmurs, as if the words can anchor a man to his body. You stay, Denny. Price's eyes flutter. Tell them. Tell who? Tell them it landed. Tell them it. His words dissolve into a cough that turns wet. If he bleeds inside, I can do little. Evans nods, throat too tight for speech. Minutes drag like hours. The engines drone. The aircraft shudders through turbulence, and each bump feels personal, as if the sky is trying to shake Price loose. Then, at last, a darker darkness ahead gives way to the faintest suggestion of open water. The coast. A thin line separating German-occupied land from the dangerous neutrality of sea. McAllister exhales through his teeth. There. Hargreaves switches frequencies, listening for friendly traffic, for any sign that someone is waiting with a runway and a stretcher. The radio crackles. A British controller's voice comes through calm, bored almost, the sound of a world where airfields exist and men don't hunt each other in hedgerows. Hawthorne identify. Hargreaves gives the codes. There's a pause then. Christ. We thought you were down. We're coming in, McAllister says. We have a serious casualty. And damage. Understood, the controller replies, professionalism tightening. Proceed to base. Medical standing by. It should feel like relief. Instead, it feels like the beginning of punishment. Because even if they land, even if Price survives, there will be questions. There are always questions when an aircraft returns with holes in it and a doctor who shouldn't exist on the manifest. McAllister can already hear the tone. Why did you descend below safe altitude? Why did you turn back? Why did you land in occupied France? Who authorized it? Where is your report? The war is fought in the air and on the ground, but it is also fought on paper, and paper is merciless. They touch down in England at dawn-gray light, rain on tarmac, a world that smells of wet concrete instead of wet fields. Ambulance men rush in. The doctor jumps down and begins giving instructions before anyone can ask who he is. Evans watches him go, hands trembling now that the work is done. He looks back at the aircraft's fuselage and sees the neat punctures of bullets. A constellation of errors and miracles. McAllister climbs down last. His boots hit the ground, and for the first time in hours, he feels gravity as something normal, not hostile. A figure waits near the operations hut. Wing Commander Harold Whitby, Station Commander, expression carved from disappointment and duty. Beside him stands an RAF Provost Sergeant with a notebook. Whitby doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. His quiet is worse. Flight Lieutenant McAllister, Whitby says, eyes flicking over the aircraft. You will report to my office immediately. Hargreaves stops beside McAllister, swallowing. Evans lingers behind them, blood still under his nails. Whitby's gaze hardens. And you will explain, he says, voice flat, why you conducted a low-altitude run in weather that grounded half this station, and why you deviated from operational orders. McAllister looks at the man's insignia, at the polished boots, at the clean cuffs, at the distance between this place and a pasture near a chapel where German headlights swept like knives. He answers simply, because they were waiting. Whitby's mouth tightens. Everyone is waiting, Flight Lieutenant. McAllister doesn't flinch. 200 men in Brittany were waiting with empty hands. A silence stretches. Whitby's eyes flick just once, to the doctor being ushered toward a medical building under guard, to the ambulance disappearing down the wet perimeter road, to the bullet holes that will have to be explained. Then he turns and walks toward the office without another word. McAllister follows, knowing what's coming. Interrogation, reprimand, possibly worse. Court-martial isn't a dramatic word tonight. It's a real one. Inside the office, the air smells of tea and cigarette smoke domestic, almost insulting. Whitby sits, opens a folder, and slides a sheet of paper across the desk. McAllister sees it upside down first. Typed lines, blank spaces, the shape of formal trouble. Whitby's voice is controlled. Your report will include why you descended to approximately 10 feet above hedgerows. It will include why you landed an RAF aircraft in occupied France. And it will include the identity of the French civilian you brought back. McAllister meets his eyes. He's a doctor. Whitby's pen pauses. That is not an identity. McAllister's jaw tightens. Of the promise in the Maquis fighter's eyes when the first containers fell. He thinks of the doctor's words. If I stay, he dies. If I go, maybe he lives. McAllister speaks carefully now, every word a shield. You don't want his name on paper. Whitby stares at him for a long moment, and something in his expression shifts, not softening exactly, but acknowledging the shape of the war. They are both inside. Outside the office window, rain streaks down the glass. Whitby finally says, You have put this station in a difficult position. McAllister nods once. Yes, sir. Whitby's voice lowers. And you may have saved a great many men in Brittany. McAllister doesn't respond. Then he leans forward slightly, just enough that the provost sergeant can't hear him if he's listening outside the door. And unofficially, Whitby adds, I suggest you remember that orders are not the only thing that keeps a war alive. McAllister holds his gaze. Whitby straightens, official mask returning. You are dismissed. McAllister steps out into the corridor, Hargreaves and Evans waiting, faces tight with questions they're afraid to ask. Evans speaks first. Price? McAllister's voice is hoarse. Alive, for now. Hargreaves exhales like he's been holding his breath since Brittany. So what happens to us? McAllister looks down the corridor, where men in clean uniforms walk past, carrying papers, clipboards, the machinery of war grinding on. What always happens, he says. They write it down. He takes a step, then another, boots loud on linoleum. And somewhere across the channel, in the hedgerows near St. Marcel, German patrols are still looking for the men who collected those containers, men who now, thanks to one Forbidden's drop and one impossible landing, have rifles in their hands and a radio that can finally speak back to London. McAllister stops at the doorway, rain-wind brushing his face. Because the real question isn't whether he'll be punished. It's whether the Maquis now supplied, now armed, will live long enough to make the punishment worth it.